Is it happening?
It's happening. Hey, friends, welcome to the Panel Jumper Light for April. What's today? April 21st, 2020. Today, apparently, Facebook has told me that it is Prince's birthday today. If you like the artist who currently goes by Prince, I was thinking of a parody song as I slept in until about noon today called Lazy MF, based on Prince's song Sexy MF. I'm not going to sing the lyrics because they are naughty. That's what the F stands for. My name is Ben. Welcome. With me, as always, is my friend and the panel jumper himself, Cole Hornaday. How are you, Cole?
Hey, Ben, you know what? We're both wearing our well-loved and well-worn Batman t-shirts.
Hey, yeah, get up a little bit further in the screen so I can see yours.
Yeah, well, mine is actually represents the worst Batman film ever made. Oh, no, actually, I take that back. It's the second worst. This is from Batman Forever. Batman and Robin, of course, was the great Joel Schumacher spectacular that killed the franchise until Christopher Nolan came along. Anyway,
Right.
just pointing that out, just, here to help.
Yeah. This is the only comic book shirt that I own, and so I wore it for our full length commentary that we did for all of our issues a number of weeks ago. If you haven't seen that, go back and check it out. It's a lot of fun. I wish my volume was higher, but anyway, what are you gonna do? Yeah. So what's going on with the panel jumper, Cole? What's going on with the panel jumper? I will tell you that today I finished the effects for our latest episode, Cole's Corner. All I got to do now is the audio, and it'll be ready to roll.
Can you tell folks about what kind of project this is? How it's a little bit off the beam?
Well, everything we do seems to be a little bit off the beam these days, but this is like this.
Fair.
Yeah, this is. I'm going to finish this, and then when you talk, I'm going to try to do something just so...
What do you want me to do?
Well, actually, start talking, and I'm going to try to fix something wrong with the stream. Thank you, Denny.
So, okay, well...
You tell everybody about the episode.
Okay, well, it's called Cole's Corner. It was conceived by Rachel Jackson and Bob Kerner in a moment of brainstorming, drunken glory, and we wanted to come up with something that looked like it was found footage. That was actually a kiddie show from cable access, and as you know, Rachel Jackson is a puppeteer extraordinaire, and we commissioned her to craft a puppet for the episode. And you know what? I don't want to tell any more because I have not seen it. It's going to be as much a surprise to me as it is to you, but I'm really looking forward to what we did. We just wanted to create a really quick bottle episode prior to the pandemic. We were trying to front load and buy us a little bit more time, so we weren't at such a timeline crunch to create an episode in the days leading up to the live show. Well, all that's changed. Speaking of the next episode, it's my draft of the next full-length episode is in the hands of Darian Lindell, and Darian is one of our brilliant local playwrights, and she's writing the B plot, and I'm looking forward to seeing that in the next week or so. And I've already started researching the next episode, which may be a bottle episode. It really kind of depends on how much thought and time I can put into it. But I've always been fascinated by the story behind the story of Alan Moore's Big Numbers. It was originally published in, I believe, 1990. It was going to be a 12-issue series about a little community in it's not in Yorkshire. It's not in a small town in the UK that is about to be overrun by an American-designed shopping mall. And basically, the whole gist of all this, of the story, is bear with me a second because I got to look up what town it's set in.
It's all right. I just noticed now that I got this new webcam. It's a high def webcam, and golly, I need a haircut. Anyway, what's the name of the town, Cole?
Northampton.
Okay.
Sadly, only 2 issues of. I mean, look at this weird format. By the way, it was drawn and painted by Bill Sienkiewicz. and it's a weird format. It's a perfect square with kind of cramped grids, and it's all black and white. So it really kind of made a lot of problems for comic book readers, for distributors, and for retailers. Bill Sienkiewicz was by the time the third issue was being worked on. Bill Sienkiewicz, he admits in a YouTube interview he did that he was going through a severe bout of depression. I think one of his parents had died, and he was going through a divorce. And the story goes that he turned over the fourth issue of Big Numbers to his protege, Al Columbia. The myth goes that Al Columbia got fed up for some reason, which I'm still researching, and he burned the entire he burned the entire manuscript and all of his artwork for the fourth issue. You can actually read the third issue online. There are a couple of different sources that have really crummy photocopies of and photostats actually of all the pages for issue number 3. So I actually have read 1 through 3, and now I'm starting to work on research on what happened to issue number 4, and that'll probably be a bottle episode.
Forgive me. Who burned it, Sienkiewicz or Columbia?
Al Columbia.
Okay.
And Al Columbia is a bit of a nutburger. I have a bunch of his books. They all have really low print runs, and he's very eccentric and rather reclusive because it's really hard to find anything about him on the web. And a lot of his comics, aside from like this book called Pim and Francie that was published through Fantagraphics, they are really low print runs. And some of his independent comic books that he did through Fantagraphics are seriously on eBay, hundreds of dollars.
Wow.
I got my hands on this book called Doghead. It's these short stories. I paid a pretty penny for this. This was published through Tundra. But what I did find, which was really cool, is he did a promo poster for Big Numbers, and it was a huge poster, like I don't know, 3x3, 3.5x3, printed on heavy paper stock, and I actually found one for like $10 on the web, and I have that rolled up in the other room. But that's really, I think, the only surviving artwork of his efforts on Big Numbers is that promotional poster. Anyway, there's a mystery there. I am looking forward to
All right,
unraveling.
and so we look forward to seeing that unraveled on a future episode of the Panel Jumper. And speaking of the current episode of the Panel Jumper, which is almost done, AJ Epstein, Yumi, and Webster Polk are currently talking about how to do the Panel Jumper Live going forward. As you know, our May 8th show has been canceled, but we are going virtual. We're taking the show online. We got some exciting new things coming up for the Panel Jumper Live that hopefully we will be able to present in the summertime. And it is almost the end of April, so spring has sprung, and it'll be summer before we know it.
Yep. What else, Ben? Should I talk about my new friend I made in isolation?
Who's your new friend? Yeah, let's go ahead.
Well, I made this friend. Yeah. I'm lonely. And my friends on Facebook and Instagram have been following the progress of making this little friend. His name is LITE, the Cabal Guy, and that name came from our friend and supporter Jeff Allman. LITE, the Cabal Guy. Hope you get the pun, because I think it's marvelous. So anyway, LITE was actually inspired by the original novella that they based John Carpenter's the screenplay of John Carpenter's The Thing on. So the original novella was called From Hell. The one that was actually published is called Who Goes There.
Sorry. From Hell or Frozen Hell?
Did I say From Hell? Frozen Hell. I was in Alan Moore mode. So Frozen Hell. This manuscript was recently unearthed. It's been buried for like 60 years.
Much like The Thing.
Exactly, yeah. And it does, and this story and From Hell, And who goes there are they. The John Carpenter movie follows these stories very, very closely. It's basically like this creature that's not mammal, that's not vegetable, somewhere in between. It can manipulate cell structure down to the mitochondrial level, and every cell is conscious. So where a lot of this comes from is that my friend Jose Amador and myself had this fantasy about producing this grand guignol stage epic of The Thing at some point in the future, using puppets, using costumes, low budget. But we want to do like the stage version of Monsters Gone Wild, either adapting Frozen Hell or Who Goes There. They're basically the same story. So I started sculpting a little friend based on those ideas, and I was actually sad when I got done, because that means I need to find something else to do with my hands.
Well, you'll just have to build another Monsters. I look forward to the show that you and Jose are going to do. I look forward to a time when we can actually go back to the theater.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of not being able to go places, San Diego Comic-Con called it off for this year. They say that anybody holding tickets or badges can either transfer them to San Diego Comic-Con 2021 or get a full refund. Cole, when was the last time you went to SDCC, or have you ever gone?
I've never gone. It's just was not something that was on my financial agenda. I have friends who go every year. It became kind of mythical to me, like this promised land for nerds, but it just looks so overwhelmingly huge, because I had friends who would go for 3 days and still not get to see everything they want to see. I just was a little bit overwhelmed by the crowds, and as years progressed, Emerald City became just as massive. I don't know if they are now, at least up to this year, running neck and neck as far as density of attendance is concerned. After watching Emerald City grow from a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day to a 4 day event, it's kind of hard for me to believe, in looking at all those masses of people, that it's not. But yeah, I don't know if there will ever be a day when I go. Honestly, you know what? I wanted to go as a professional. I wanted there to be a day where, like, as a writer or as a web series producer, I could sit in a booth and talk about myself all day long, over the rush of the crowd, over the roar of the crowd, because I can't think of anything more fun than that.
I know. That's probably what's going to get me to San Diego Comic-Con. One, being able to say it properly, and two,
Yep.
Just being down there and tabling and having a reason to be there, not just as a participant. That's also one of the reasons why, like, I've never been to South by Southwest. I've always wanted to go, but I've always wanted to go as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Of course, got to make films to do that anyway. Let's before we move on to our next topic, I should have worn a hat. Good Lord.
You look fine.
Before we move on, I'm very vain. I don't know if you know this about me. Before we move on to our next topic, I want to show you a video that we made a number of years ago with our friend Manager Mike, who is on the chat actually right now. This is an old video series that we made back in 2016, maybe 2017. We shot a series called Ask the Panel Jumper, and we asked the question to our two speakers, the panel jumper himself, Cole Hornaday, and Manager Mike, if they preferred print or digital comics. I'm going to show you that video right now. So, Cole, it's about a minute and a half. I'll let you know when we're back.
Hello, I'm Cole Hornaday, and this is Ask the Panel Jumper. And the question put to us today is, digital comics, wave of the future or universal threat? I personally, not really excited about it. I'll give you a little personal insight. I spent an afternoon at Emerald City Comic Con, actually volunteering for the enemy. I volunteered at the Comixology booth so I could actually get a free pass to the show. And I stood there all day with nothing but iPads around me while people came up and paged through comics on the pad. And it was really kind of plain and dreary and sad for me because all around me was all this color and all this paper and product and whatnot. But the thing that concerned me the most was the number of comic book collectors, albeit geeks and nerds or what have you, came up, paged through the digital pages and said, you know what, my wife loves these things. She just loves it because I'm not bringing home tons of comic books every month.
But therein lies the problem. It becomes easier to store all your comic books in one small little handy digital device, and not boxes and upon boxes of stuff. But there's a couple of things that happen there. One, obviously, the brick and mortar retailers are the ones that fall victim there. It's no longer a community of like-minded geeks. It's no longer a community spot for them to be at. And also, part of the issue that a lot of us got into comic books for was because of its interesting nature, and also there was a collectible aspect. Once things go digital, the collectible market for that disappears.
You can't have an autographed digital copy of Ultimates #1.
No, you can't, and no one would care if you had one because they could just copy it.
That's right.
So
it steals away that which is unique about collecting. So that's a point of concern, is that with the rise of digital comics, we look at potentially losing the brick and mortar stores, the distributors, those sorts of things. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of creative energy. Of course, the artists and the writers and the editors and all those folks will still be in business, and the publishers will be saving a boatload of money. But you're going to lose that tangible aspect of participating in the medium. I love holding a comic book. I love the smell of comic books. Now, albeit this is an older comic book and it's made out of paper pulp, and that sweet, sicky sweet smell that rises from the paper is because it's slowly breaking down and turning to dust. But let's look past that. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Hit us up on our YouTube channel, go visit us on Facebook, or send us a tweet.
Yeah, I just an hour before we started recording, or started streaming this rather, I talked with our good friend Chris Casso at Comics Dungeon, and he had to admit we are living in a topsy-turvy time because Todd McFarlane, for once in his illustrious career, has been the voice of reason where publishing is concerned, because he called out DC, Marvel, I believe, including Image, and I believe IDW, but the main publishers who are in the forefront.
Sorry, Cole, I'm going to interrupt you. I just realized my my audio was off when so I'm going to give a quick recap of what I said, and then you can continue on. Sorry to interrupt, but because my I turned my volume down and I didn't turn it back up. And so anyway, the reason we watch this is because we now live in a world where we don't really have that preference, where watching or reading comics digitally versus reading comics in print form was a preference. But now since we're in the beginning of this global pandemic, we might not have this preference anymore. We might be forced to read them only digitally. But DC Comics is striking out on their own, and they're going to try to distribute their comics themselves, and it's gotten a mixed reaction, to say the least.
Yeah, it's they are attempting to go through, or their strategy is to go through Midtown Comics and DCBS, who are both mail order retailers, and that's been their stock and trade. One of the biggest beeps is, okay, well, once you get these books distributed, sidebar, these are not in-demand books. These are books that are like, the first of the Sam Hill or the Hill House books, and a couple of books that have already been published for Walmart, and then I think a Green Lantern or something. But there's like this handful of books that are not going to be high sell-through books, and you're asking retailers to they're asking retailers to set themselves in a compromising position and become mail order houses themselves, because most of the stores are not going to be open. They're going to be shipping. Who's going to be there to receive the books? That means that retailers, comic shop owners, are going to have to receive these books at their homes, and probably ship from their homes. So I was talking to Chris Casso, our dear friend over at Comics Dungeon, and he said this smacks of editorial obligation because the books are already sitting on the production floor. They've already been printed. They're trying to move them. But the takeaway is that retailers are being asked to compromise their safety through doing this. They're also being asked to order through mail order companies that have actually not had successful relationships with other retailers. And they're asking the shop owners and their staff to put themselves in a compromising, unsafe position. There's a lot of bad things that are being asked here. And Chris described it best. He said, who would have thought this pandemic, we knew the pandemic was going to turn our lives all topsy-turvy, but it's also put him in a compromising position, because now, after suffering with the monopoly of diamond distribution and all their crummy tactics, they are actually looking like the good guys in this story, because they're actually trying to...
I know, right?
They're trying to do the right thing for the retailers. The other thing that's topsy-turvy that I tried to bring up earlier, unsuccessfully, the sidebar, is that now we have Todd McFarlane being the voice of reason. He's actually asking publishers to step up and say, hey, we need to all come to the table and come to an agreement when we're going to reopen shop and when it's going to be beneficial for everybody. So he's calling out DC, Marvel, and also including Image, and I think it's IDW is the other publisher. The four publishers that are the biggest mainstays of retailers. And Mr. John Gaunt of comic books himself is asking people to be reasonable and consider the community that they're that they are supporting. So it's topsy-turvy time. It's a weird timeline, people. It is weird.
Yeah, it's as Chris put it in his email to us when we were talking about doing more Panel Jumper during this time. He, like many other comic book retailers, are working 4 times as much for 1/4 of the pay, and it truly is the darkest timeline for them. He linked to this guy. I don't know if you mentioned him, Brian Hibbs, who's another retailer, a Facebook post, and I like what Chris wrote in the Comics Dungeon newsletter. He's like, Chris said that they at Comics Dungeon and Corner Comics aren't going to subscribe to the new DC distribution plan, and this guy Brian Hibbs is lays out many of their points, but Chris would not have used so many swear words. But it's one of the other points that I don't think you mentioned was that they were given 4 days to set up an account and get right with the new overlords. The overlords being DCBS and Midtown, and I just can't imagine, like, retailers are scrambling right now anyway, and just having them, have to jump through all these hoops just to get, books you're not going to make any money on.
Right. They're doing one thing that this retailer, was it Brian
Hibbs. I don't know where he works, what his store is.
He's in San Francisco. Okay. He says that And one of the things that Hibbs points out, and that Chris pointed out when I was talking to him today, is that in order to keep their head above water, all comic books retail outlets, all stores are forced to be mail order houses, and they're working triple time to try to make that money. But some of them are actually succeeding in dog paddling because they're selling $20 and $30 graphic novels. Their community is stepping up and buying a lot of high-end books. But to force these retailers to sell $4 books, that's diminishing returns. With the shipping, with all that, with the effort, with the person hours, that's baloney. Yeah. Oh, by the by, I'm sorry, I have to apologize. I described Todd McFarlane as comic book industry's John Gaunt. John Gaunt is a Shakespearean character. Todd McFarlane is anything but that. It's John Galt. So I apologize to Shakespeare. Moving on.
How dare you confuse Shakespeare and Ayn Rand?
I'm a terrible person. I make my own friends.
You do make your own friends. I don't make my own friends. I'm doing this thing. So Cole, that little thing is going to become a collectible one of these days because the panel jumper made it with his own hands. Speaking of collectibles, I don't really collect comic books, although I did order some comics from Comics Dungeon. I collect baseball cards, as we all know, and I'm doing this new thing this year where I am not opening my baseball cards until the end of the year when I'm gonna buy them with the same frequency that I normally buy them. But I'm just gonna put them away, squirrel them away, and then I'm going to have like a baseball card pack opening. I don't want to call it an orgy, but it's gonna be. I'm gonna put aside some time for this and just sit down on my bed and spend an entire evening opening up baseball cards.
Well, you have to videotape it because people who collect action figures do unboxing. It's a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing, and I've actually watched some of these videos.
So you can do your unpacking or unpackaging or unpouching or however you want to do it. Unpouching.
Technically, it's called breaking when you open a baseball card pack.
That's too inside baseball for me.
Kind of literally. Hey, so that's all on the agenda that I have for today. What TV are you watching these days that you... Oh, actually, there is one more thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
I saw today that HBO Max is going to have a new show called Justice League Dark. And now, what is Justice League Dark? Is it just the Justice League After Hours? Is it Sexy Justice League? Is it Justice League with like at least 77% cacao? What's going on here?
Well, unfortunately, Justice League Dark are the Vertigo characters that Dan Didio decided needed to be incorporated back into the DC universe proper. So it's John Constantine, Swamp Thing, Zatanna, I think Etrigan the Demon, but it's all the supernatural characters that for a while were like more adult or at least more speculative fiction. And there's a Justice League Dark animated film that's not too shabby. I remember kind of liking it. But, I just have to get over the fact that Vertigo is dead, that DC readership suffers from a lack of intellectual curiosity. So we have to have these characters that once had some type of dramatic spine be, shoved back into the superhero universe proper, including like my beloved Swamp Thing and John Constantine. So that's what that will be. What I'm hoping is that it will be gritty and it'll at least be challenging to the readers. But the problem is when you slap the Justice League label on this, that kind of diminishes what those characters are about. So.
Yeah, is it just because people expect Batman and Superman?
Well, yeah, Justice League that's the superhero brand, and they're rebranding. Didio wanted to rebrand all these characters, all of our dark and sophisticated suspense characters, into the mainstream universe.
Yeah. Cool. So, that's what I wanted to mention. Is there anything you want to bring up before we call it an evening?
Well, I did want to mention something I discovered recently, which kind of blew my brain. So one of my favorite comic book creators is Rick Beach. He created Brat Pack, the Max Immortal, and for decades he's been working on what he calls his King Hell Heroica, and he plotted all these stories out decades ago, back in the 90s. And Brat Pack is actually supposed to be the conclusion of the quartet of story arcs he's working on, all of which are really acerbic satires of DC Comics in a lot of ways. Brat Pack was his take on the death of Jason Todd and the mail-in, or excuse me, the toll-free decision to kill that character. But he's been publishing stuff in spits and spurts. That too. And every once in a while, I'm like, "What's Rick doing?" Because he publishes stuff independently, frequently sells through his website. Come to find out, he's actually been doing a sequel to the Max Immortal called Boy Max Immortal that he has been publishing to order through Amazon. So I'm a little bit disenchanted by the fact that he set up an Amazon storefront. And because of my disdain for Amazon, what did I do? I bought these through independent retailers and not through Amazon themselves. So that's how I struck back. But there are two. Volume 1 actually came out in 2017, and Volume 2 came out just this year. And they're over 100-page. The actual Max Immortal story is only half the publication, and then the rest is a lot of back matter, a lot of commissioned artwork, some of his short stories, some of his unpublished stuff. And because I'm a big fan of Rick Beach, I don't care! I'm happy! But now I have to follow him on Amazon so I know when he's going to be publishing the next one. It's going to pain in the ass, but I care about him enough that I'm going to support him. So yeah, Rick Beach, Boy Max Immortal, Volume 1 and 2 are out there. Find them.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I don't have a book report to do today. I haven't read anything new, but I did. As you know, I hosted a Stream the Bottle last Friday, and it was a superheroes and supervillains version of Stream the Bottle, and I did talk about the plot to kill off Jason Todd. And I did bring up some of my favorite comics, one of which is Kaiju Max, which of course you introduced me to because we did that episode about Kaiju. But also, one of the ones that I talked about was Curse Words, which is a book by Charles Soule and oh my goodness, what's that fella's name? Charles Soule, and he also does God Hates Astronauts. This is going to bother me. I'm going to have to look it up. Vamp for me.
Okay. I'm now vamping, so what else do I have to show?
Ryan Brown! It's Ryan Brown!
No, wait, I'm not done vamping yet!
It's Ryan Brown. Curse Words. I actually, Nicole Lamb, our friend from the Perfect Bound podcast, has actually introduced me to this comic. I have all 4 trades. I think they're still being published. The last I saw was that it was either Charles Soule or Ryan Brown. This was, I think, maybe like 6 months ago. Just recently had a child, and so their output was going to diminish a little bit. So I think a couple books were going to be delayed. But anyway, I'm going to reread all of these. I'm going to reread all 4 trades because, quite honestly, it's been so long since I've read the first one. I forgot what happened. I wouldn't be able to catch up. So, yeah, Curse Words. One of my favorites. I'm going to reread it, and got plenty of time these days. I'm going to throw it on my bed.
Okay. Is that where it's going to be until you read it?
No, I'll probably put it on my dresser, which is right there.
Okay.
That's where I keep all the stuff that I'm currently reading, which is currently empty because I've not been reading as much as I should be these days.
Well, I've been reading a lot for both of us, so it's okay. Well, you're actually still working, so you're earning your keep. I'm not. I'm just reading books and making my own friends. I wanted to say, you asked what are we watching on TV, but before we do that, one of the things I left out was, hey, here's the illustration that actually inspired Larry the Cabal guy. So this is an illustration from by Wayne B. Barlow from the novella Who Goes There. So this is the way that John Campbell Jr. described the creature in the original novella. So you can kind of see a family resemblance. Kinda, maybe.
Yeah. Totally.
Anyway, I was gonna feel incomplete until I showed this picture. Now I feel good. Now we can move on.
All right. I got nothing else. Do you have? Oh, yeah, TV that we're watching.
I have. Let's see. Did I recommend Tales from the Loop on Amazon Prime?
No, I haven't heard of it.
It's really fascinating. It's about this this fictitious little town it's got to be somewhere in like Sweden or Norway or some Scandinavian community, and it's all built around this place called the Loop, where there's this underground super secret science facility. But every episode is based on a painting.
Okay.
And I'm looking up the name of the painter right now, because this I've seen the paintings for years on the web. Simon, and of course, he's got a Norwegian name, and I'm not going to pronounce it. Simon Stollenhag did all of these really fascinating paintings. Stylistically, they're absolutely captivating, because it's a world that looks like it was designed by Scandinavians in 1970. All right.
Okay.
And all the technology in this town is, stops at like 1979 or 1980. They all drive late model 70s Volvos and stuff like that. There are no cell phones. It's landlines, analog TV, CRT television sets, phonographs, and yet they have these robots that look like they were designed by a Volvo. And they have these hover agricultural tractors and things design concept aside, which I was madly in love with, the stories are really fascinating. They're very Twilight Zone-esque. They all overlap. I think it's like 12 episodes, and they're mostly about like 4 or 5 different families and in this community, and the people who work at the Loop. And I was pleasantly surprised. And I recommend it.
What? Tales from the Loop. And it's on, how do I watch it? What platform?
That's on
Amazon Prime. Great. I have that. Yeah. I've not really watched anything pop culture, like comic book related. I guess all TV is pop culture these days. But I have been going back and rewatching Community, because I think I saw like half of the first season like 5 years ago. And so it's all on Netflix now, so I went back and I started watching it. But it's funny, right? I like it. I enjoy it. But here's the...
Are you trying to convince me?
What's that?
Are you trying to convince me?
No, you don't need to... I don't care if you watch it or not. But here's the strange thing. Ever since I started watching it, and I've been binging it, right? As much as I can binge half-hour episodes. I watch maybe 4 at a time at the most, because I generally only watch TV late at night. And but I've noticed that after I started watching it, the YouTube recommendation algorithm has been recommending to me a lot of Community TV show based videos, like reaction videos and what does this really mean, and like the day that killed Community. And I never got these videos served to me before until after I started watching the TV show. So I don't know if it's either my phone, which is just always on my desk, listening to what I'm watching on TV and then relaying that to YouTube, or if somehow Netflix and YouTube are in cahoots and Netflix is telling YouTube what I watch. But something's happening.
That's a really good question. I think that's really, really fucking spooky, and I hate it. Because let's face it, there's any number of avenues that the algorithms could be capping. So, yeah. What I find particularly sad is like our friends who are, like so many of our friends who are anti-Trump, they get bombarded with Trump stuff because they're always talking about Trump.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I'm like, I don't talk about Trump on the web. I don't talk about Trump on social media. I don't want that stuff filtering into my reality. So there we go.
All right. I got one thing. I have one story I'm going to tell you, but we're going to do this off air because I don't want to be on the live stream. Cole, Hornaday, it's been a pleasure. Before we go this evening, do you have any final thoughts for April 21st, 2020?
No, but should I auction this off for charity? Because I'm thinking maybe that's a good idea. Let me know what you guys think.
Put in the comments. Should Cole auction it off for charity, and what your favorite charity is? Where should the money go? Unless, Cole, you have an idea. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here.
It just occurred to me while I was making it. I'm like, I have a lot of time, and I sure was proud of this one, and I can make more things. But I also am like, I don't have a lot of cash in my pockets to give to people. I mean, I'm buying what I can to support my favorite retailers and stuff, but I don't have an income. What can I donate? What can I donate? So let me know what you think.
Let us know what you think. In the meantime, Jim Jewell, who's on the stream, he says yes. Thank you, Jim.
Yes to what, Jim?
To auctioning it off for charity. Come on, keep up.
Okay.
Anyway, that's going to be our show for today. That's the Panel Jumper LITE. Cole, we'll talk about when we want to do this next. This is sort of like, this isn't a regular thing. This is whenever Cole and I both have the time to do it. And the more we do it, the more we're going to screw up, like when I didn't turn my volume back on after the movie. But
but disconnect the call like I did last night. So
exactly. At least I don't have to try to vamp to get you back on the stream. Anyway, thank you for watching, and stay tuned to the Panel Jumper Facebook page. Like us, and we'll let you know when we're back live. And we're out.
Bye. All right. What did I do wrong?